Welcome to Decentral Lens, where lifelong friends Plutoshi and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
Here we go, everybody. Welcome. Week of January 31st, 2024. It's hard to say 2024, but I'll get used to it. I am Plutoshi, and on my right is Disco.
Hello, everybody. I'm Disco. I'm happy to be here on the last day of January as we turn the page for the first month of the year. And, there's no shortage of things to be excited about and things that have already happened this year. So, holy cow, let's dig into some of the stuff this week. I'm very excited.
Yeah, a lot of cool news. And Disco, I think you've got some breaking news for us, don't you?
Yeah. It's, we usually have been talking about the ETFs to start, but this just came across the wire, and it says that FTX now expects to fully repay customers, but won't restart the exchange. So it's kind of good news for everybody who's been trying to see what's going to happen there. We'll see how this all plays out. The token had a little bit of a surge. The FTT token went up 11% in the aftermath, but it'd be kind of nice.
Why? Like what value
for doing a good payback to people? Like, I have no idea. And
so let's say this again, just because this is just came across. So just so I get it, FTX is going to pay everybody back in full.
It says FTX, the bankrupt cryptocurrency exchange run by SBF, said it expects to fully repay its customers according to a court hearing.
Oh, wow. Now, and they're not reopening. These idiots aren't rebranding FTX. Be like, hey, now that SBF's not there, let's be FTX. Like, yeah, I think that that brand equity is tarnished. It's time to throw it in the garbage. So that's kind of a double win for us in the crypto space. We in the crypto space who have known that FTX was pure dog crap from the beginning and not to go near it. And to tell, I know everyone I told, they saw the commercials. They're like, should I get a little Bitcoin? I'm like, dollar cost average in. Should I use FTX? No. Use Coinbase, use Kraken, use something safer.
I was recommended to start looking at things on FTX when I first got in, and I used it just to look at some pricing, but I didn't ever establish an account, and I'm grateful for that. And again, I think that this news, should be with a bit of a grain of salt, just because the credibility, coming out of some of the statements from that team hasn't always necessarily landed. But I'm hopeful that it ends up being true and that people get made whole. That'd be great.
Yep. Well, again, it doesn't affect me as much, except for they're going to sell it. They sold $1 billion of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, right? So that was a part of the big part of the leak from Grayscale. But there's obviously plenty of other tokens. How the FTT token would go up, and how you make someone whole who held the FTT token. Maybe that had nothing to do with the fact that went up. Feels like, I guess with the Pepe coin and meme coins, like, why not? there's no value to it, but why not go up?
Well, it also goes to, I'd be curious, and again, this is just coming over the wire or whatever it is, but I'd also be curious how they're valuing making people whole. Again, is it at the price when everything got frozen, or is it at today's value, or is it just a USD, or all that? So obviously if you listen to previous shows, I have a bit of a vested interest in seeing how these proceedings end up, because I'm waiting to see how the Gemini earn situation lands, and hopefully everybody gets made whole. And I'm hoping that I get made whole with the holdings that I had that got locked, as opposed to a straight US dollar equivalency, where then I would have to go in and reallocate and repurchase things at a different rate.
Disco, I hate to break it to you, but they already said that they would be making whole based on the dollar amount at the time. You're screwed, dude.
I don't think you know what? I'm not going to believe that yet, because that wasn't for.
You're not going to believe what the Gemini lawyer said.
No, Gemini didn't say that yet. That was from a different. It's hard to keep track of all the bankruptcies and the lockups, but I saw that was a policy that came from one of the myriad of cases like this. I remain hopeful that I'll get a 1-to-1, but it hasn't. I don't think I would have known if that was essentially said, but it's probably leaning that way. That seems to be the precedent, but I'm going to remain hopeful, just like I'm going to remain hopeful that FTX, everyone's going to be made whole and they'll be okay with that. So a little bit of a blue sky and lollipop vibe, but I'm hoping that it plays out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you always want it in crypto and Bitcoin and ETH, especially since Bitcoin's doubled right since then,
Yeah.
if not more, and then ETH has it's gone up 1500 to 2300. ETH slowly making its way up. So jumping over to ETFs, I mean, you kind of got to go there because so much because a lot of people are kind of dollar cost averaging in and adding this to their retirement accounts. But what's going on with Bitcoin ETFs? We're 13 days in, and the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which is the only one that pre-existed kind of in a weird state, they're continuing to lose money, but the outflows are slowing down. And I believe day 13, which was yesterday, Tuesday the 30th or whatever, the inflows to IBIT, which is BlackRock, was 299 million. The outflow of GBTC was 220 million. So this is the first day that one of the players had a bigger inflow than Grayscale had an outflow. So I think the leak in the boat exiting Grayscale is slowing.
No, I think that's for sure. I think that we're seeing, we kind of had to go through something that not everybody, articulated or, predicted in the first 2-week playbook of the approval. And I think it was more everyone just so excited about, actually kind of winning a 10-year, whatever battle it was with the SEC to get it to be listed. And then there was just kind of this euphoria and joy, like, oh, here it is, it's there. And nobody really realized, but people are going to move to different ones with lower fee structures. And then again, you just had a lot of this kind of Grayscale right sizing or normalizing or whatever it was. And you're starting to, and I don't want to use like a steady lads, but you're starting to see it kind of steady out a little bit and get, like, okay, this is what we kind of saw. And I think it's pretty bullish just because it never really tapped below 38. And, if you were talking 12 months ago, 38 would have been a nice number to be at. So seeing it kind of nestle in this 42, 43 range with, inflows looking to become more net positive, maybe the whole thesis will end up playing out. And we always kind of said, it's going to take a little bit for the dust to settle and for us to kind of see these things take its own sea legs and get moving. So it's exciting to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, it's going to take a while for all the Raymond James and the advisors and stuff to get in there. The cool thing is yesterday the net was plus 247 million inflows. So GBTC was minus 220, but the rest were obviously plus like 500 million, which in a day, think about that, 500 million, that's just for the day. So the total flows for 13 days were 1.2 billion in, with Fidelity and BlackRock leading the charge, both at BlackRock 2.6 billion total inflows, Fidelity 2.2 billion total inflows. And then there's a big chasm between the next ones, but still, I'm sure as far as ETFs go, yes, BlackRock and Fidelity are among the top 10. I assume now with those numbers, they're in the top 5. But even ARK and Bitwise at 630 million, they're both literally tied right now. I mean, that's 4 above 500 million inflows in just 2 weeks. Invesco's at 292 million, and then it drops off from there. But it's a bullish signal. It's going to take time. The reason we're looking at it is because, I know I'm dollar cost averaging in to be able to take advantage of the retirement accounts for Bitcoin, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, if you kind of think of it, and I tend to go back to thinking of things from a music and a music chart perspective, but you basically had a whole new genre released into the ETF space. And if you look at just the amount of activity, it's kind of like, when a Beatles or a Drake record drops, and it's like, hey, they had 7 out of the top 10 songs. It's kind of
Right.
getting that way when you just look at the numbers, and it does seem like BlackRock and Fidelity kind of jackrabbited out and were the first to kind of have some separation. I'll ask you: is the ARC maintaining its correlation to the price, like that is in place and that's still going on, like that's how it's all
Yeah.
set up?
Yes. So ARC and I believe Bitwise, let me see. Yeah, I believe Bitwise are the two that have the price that are, no, I'm sorry, it is not Bitwise. Maybe it's Invesco Galaxy. There's one other that keeps
Okay.
the price to 1 to 1,000. So I bought ARC. I was going to buy it probably anyway with Kathy Wood. But if you're going to track in your little stock portfolio, ups and
Right.
downs, you want to see the price that is something that makes sense to you. And it's not this, like the price of BlackRock right now is $24.77. Fidelity is $37.98. Like, I have no reference to that. Obviously, if you hold it, it doesn't really matter. You can reference the price to itself, but you might as
Right.
well kill two birds with one stone and know the price of Bitcoin. So it's just little details, I think, go a long way.
Yeah.
And that's what Kathy Wood is known for.
Yeah. And then it came out also that the Bitwise ETF did something pretty interesting, right? Where they published the wallet addresses. So when you just start seeing it, you're almost kind of getting new best practices. And I would argue from whatever they call it, what the newborn 9 or whatever it may be called, like you're going to see differentiation. And, basically it's the benefit of competitiveness, right? So we're going to see these different funds kind of make tweaks and reduce fees or do whatever it is to make them kind of have some unique propositions and stuff like that. So that's going to also be interesting to watch as this thing continues to develop.
Yeah, I know 2 of them have reduced their fees. Probably 2 of the ones
Probably at the
that
bottom of the
I know
leaderboard.
Invesco Galaxy was one of them, but yeah, they're really trying, because right now it's probably a kind of a cash grab race. But again, in the medium to long term, all of these companies, I know BlackRock is already going to investment advisors and all those relationships they have. They're running full educational seminars on this about Bitcoin. Like, they are in it for the long haul. So expect them to take the lion's share. Fidelity obviously is another multi-trillion dollar juggernaut. These guys are going to be educating institutions and retail investors on why maybe it's good to allocate some to Bitcoin and just educating on Bitcoin in general. So I think it's only going to grow. But an important point you made about Bitwise showing the wallet addresses, not only is this kind of a differentiator for them, they were the first ones to say like, hey, we have this new technology and we are holding exactly what we're holding. But that's also a shot over the bow for everything. Like, think of gold. Like, gold, yeah, there are auditors, but I don't know who the auditors are, right? So this is also telling the entire TradFi financial system that we can show you Bitcoin for Bitcoin, what people purchased in our ETF and what we are holding. In real time. That has never been done before. It has never been seen before. And it is just further proof why DeFi and Bitcoin and Ethereum and these better immutable blockchains are better than the current TradFi system, because they can be independently verified by all of us.
Yeah, it's kind of the first representation and validation of the transparency provided by the technology of the blockchain, and seeing that come into play, it may make those guys a little bit nervous when they're like, this is where it could be headed. Like, I better make sure I have all my gold bricks accounted for my ETFs and things like that. So that's definitely a new frontier and kind of a new infiltration of kind of this new school, the next generation of accountability and transparency, for sure.
Yeah, and to support your point before that, the GPT is settling and the whole ecosystem, we went from 47,000, then I think it dipped down to 39,000, maybe even 38,000.
38 for a bit.
Okay, so it went down to 38, but it's already coming back up. And if you look at the exchanges, $767 million worth of Bitcoin, that's 17,700 Bitcoin, have come off the exchanges. So short-term traders are, they're kind of backing off a bit, because once the GBTC, now that leaky boat is a little less leaky and these other ones are going up steady, more revenues and income and assets under management are coming in for these, what do you call them? The new nine, or the newborn nine.
I didn't make that one up. I heard it
Yeah,
somewhere.
but people are taking money off the exchange, Bitcoin off the exchange, because they're kind of like, it's like it's starting to drizzle a little, and that awesome wall ball game we had going in the alley, like, we'll be back. We're done. So it's all signs point to, and it might go down again for a while, but in the long run, it just seems like all signs point to a steady increase in the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was also interesting this week. Google, kind of representative of Web 2 personified, right? They approved Bitcoin ETF advertising. So to your point, they're talking about these different operations doing kind of their, educational tour and their kind of, roadshow on Bitcoin.
Right.
Now you have, Google looking and taking in that revenue and saying, okay, you guys can advertise here, and that'll be interesting. And I'm sure we can kind of get a read on the ad spend and we'll report back on that. But it'd be interesting to see,
Yeah, good point.
who's putting the most kind of weight on the scale in terms of the advertising within the Google ecosystem as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy for Google to, they're pretty risk averse now, as pretty much it who owns search. And if it becomes legal, by the SEC and they're on the market, it was an easy decision for them. And I know BlackRock has already started advertising on Google. So yeah, expect to be a mad rush there, and expect to be a mad rush, I would think, at some point with TV ads, and even going bigger, especially from BlackRock, and I would assume Fidelity, but we'll see.
Yeah. No, I think most of them have gotten into that game. Another thing that popped, and we're just, kind of working through Bitcoin and ETF news, is it looks as if Hong Kong is looking to kind of follow in the footsteps of the SEC approval in America, and their SFC, it's not called the SEC there, but the SFC receives their first spot Bitcoin ETF application. So again, when we zoom out and we look at the whole footprint of the space, and we look at the global qualities of Bitcoin and the global appeal of it, again, I feel like we're in a great space when we haven't seen kind of that influx from, some of the other countries and other regions in the world get involved with this. So it's exciting to kind of consider just the scope of things, and how, you do have that fixed supply, all the kind of cornerstones we go back to with it. It's really interesting to see it actually infiltrate and become a new asset class here, and then most likely around all these other areas of the world as well.
Yeah, well said. I mean, 21 million supply is a 21 million supply, and the world is a big place. It's a big place. So on those coattails, a lot of optimism was speculating around, what was it, in April or May, Ethereum ETF launch, because if Bitcoin, of course, then Ethereum. And, I got to say, I'm not happy about it, but now more FUD is coming out about that. Gary Gensler basically said, hey, this was a specific Bitcoin approval only. This has nothing to do with any other cryptocurrencies. And Disco, you probably know this better than I do. They delayed Fidelity's. Well, they delayed someone's ETF. They just pushed it back. And that's the second one that got delayed, right?
Right. From my kind of read on it is, they delayed a BlackRock one that was coming to, like, the deadline was coming up in, January, but the sentiment has been that the real kind of no-go for this year will be, I believe, towards the end of May, because I think a handful of the applications come due then. And if we learned anything from the last one, they tend to want to wait till the last minute, except when they send something out 24 hours early by mistake. They can't manage the communication stream on the Bitcoin ETF approval. So hopefully they're better with this. But I'll give you some credit, Plutoshi, because when everyone was all, running parades and going crazy about the Bitcoin and then eats next, you did point out that, there are some more intricacies and complications that probably need to be considered to full on get that moving and get that going. And you were kind of cautious in terms of saying, well, let's hold on. I don't necessarily know that this means the floodgates are completely open. And Gensler kind of backed you up a little bit on that, saying, hey, Bitcoin was a bit of a very unique situation that he always kind of understood it, right? Like, so we had a background talking about it and teaching about it and stuff like that. And so Ethereum does have a little bit more complications, but then other people are saying, well, look at BlackRock's record. It's like 600 to 1 in terms of getting ETF approvals approved.
Yeah.
So, you got to then wait and see what, the think power ends up being as we get closer to kind of this more maturation date.
Yeah, that's true. But you got to look at the bigger picture too. I mean, this is an election year. Gary Gensler is clearly, in cahoots with Elizabeth Warren and kind of the Democratic Party thoughts on cryptocurrencies, and they're pretty against it. I think we can all agree. And whatever Gensler's personal opinions are, with no microphones on in a closed room, I think deep down he likes Bitcoin and he understands crypto more than anyone thinks he does. But I think in a political year, he is going to kick the can down the road. I mean, with an election in November, is he even going to be the SEC chair? I sure as heck hope not, because I honestly don't think he's qualified to do that job. He's biased, but I think there's a very heavy thumb on him putting pressure there. So politically, if he can kick the can down the road to see what the new formation of the cabinet is it more Democratic Party where he's going to have more support, at least from the government? But regardless, TD Cohen, I believe, said 2025 at the earliest. And I hope they're wrong. And Larry Fink has certainly showed us like he could just walk in and be like, hey, Gensler, hold my lunch, but I think it's going to be 2025. Looking at Polymarket here, this is just public sentiment. It's not like that, this changes with the wind based on the news, but right now they're saying by May 31st, the votes, the money is slightly in the no. Yes is 48%. I guess no would then be 53% of it being approved by May 31st. I'm definitely in the right now majority no camp for public opinion.
Yeah. And then when you start thinking about, you bring up the politics side of it and the politics side of the SEC. And there was something else that came out this week where the Republican French Hill says that he's optimistic for new crypto legislation overall in 2024. So you have Republicans being optimistic on this side. They're still going to have to kind of acquiesce and understand, or at least hear kind of the warrants of it. And it'll be interesting to see. I think that's probably, you may be right. Like that may be the big point or big kind of thing that we're looking at now is what are they going to try to do in terms of, some actual legislation? And that maybe, it might kind of be like a lot of things go on hold before an election cycle, commences and ends. And maybe that's the same sort of thing here. It's like, well, why are we going to keep doing this until we get kind of a broader rules of the road in place?
Well, remember, you right now, as it stands, you have 2 on the SEC commission of the 5 who are going to vote against it. You have 2 who are probably going to vote for, like, if they had to vote right now for it, and Gensler is the swing vote, and clearly he's already saying the signal no. So he probably feels he has enough political protection, or he's so hitched to that wagon that's, and they're basically saying, no, it stops there. We're already disappointed that you let that one go through, which after the lawsuit, I don't know how he had a choice unless he's basically like breaking the law and going against the courts. But yeah, this one will be interesting.
Well, it hasn't. I mean, we've talked about it multiple times how, there's theories on is Ethereum drafting Bitcoins, what's happening with Solana on the price side of it. But this news, they're kind of the news of the trend being not necessarily positive on the ETF approval coming at that point, you do see, I just saw this today, that Ethereum options trading volume hit an all-time high. And, so there are people betting, I guess is the best way to say it,
Yeah.
for 2,500 price point for ETH on February 23rd. So it's a short month. We're turning the page to February, but it seems like there is some some folks who are banking on the fact that Ethereum's going to get, more of its time to shine in kind of this next wave. And that's regardless of the ETF situation and that side of it. So I don't necessarily think that the ETF for Ethereum, if it doesn't happen short term, is going to necessarily be a big knock on the overall Ethereum story moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're at 2350 right now, so 2500. Like it's up, but it's not like it's a massive stretch, right? So we'll see. It's I think political is the biggest part, and this might come down to another lawsuit, which would be certainly a waste of money and resources, considering we're paying Gary Gensler's salary as citizens and taxpayers, that our own government is fighting things that have already, but at the end of the day, like you said, we need, with Congress, and hopefully not overreaching rules, but we need common sense rules, and the whole Howey test. Like, we just need a whole new infrastructure. But again, I guess I'll finish this segment saying Bitcoin and Ethereum don't care. The only thing governments can do is to limit their citizens from using it, which, with innovation and with more store of value for money that's not hyperinflating, because the formula, that they're doing people a disservice and telling me what I can and can't buy, like Vanguard, which I love on X. I see like everyone's calling them Vanguard now. Like what a stupid, and they doubled down. I heard they even came out with like another press release last week. It's not even worth mentioning, but I have success. I've been with Vanguard. My dad was with Vanguard for most of my adult life, and I'm one by one taking my accounts away from them, and I'm nothing to them, but hopefully there's enough of us where they wake up. I'm not going to complain and picket about it. I'm going to move with my wallet and with my feet. So see you Vanguard. Like, have fun being in the 20th century. Like, evolve or die. And I got to say that the new place that I'm storing some of my retirement accounts, like, the interface is better. I'm like, God, I felt
like, what was I doing?
Yeah, I felt like I went from Atari 2600 to like a PS4, so we'll see. All of these things, wrap up nicely together with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And this is just going to make Bitcoin, like, because it's more available in the public markets. It's going to make it shine. One interesting little kind of parallel that's going on that I find very interesting. ETH, as we've been talking about, has kind of been crabbing. Just the price is kind of little up, little down. I mean, Ethereum basically invented DeFi and invented art pretty much on the blockchain and had the first vibrant ecosystem. Well, Solana now is, as far as NFT sales and all that stuff, I mean, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana are literally neck and neck. So here's the 7-day look. Ethereum sales at 69 million, Bitcoin 59 million, Solana 50 million, Polygon's next at 11 million. So it's really a 3-horse race. But the interesting parallel is that Ethereum kind of invented all this stuff. It's already had its degen airdrops with Uniswap and ENS, and there's still a bunch of degen airdrops that are happening on Ethereum, but really all the energy is going to Solana and Bitcoin, which is really interesting. Like, Solana has clearly emerged as a number 3, just pure degen play. But what's the latest token? Jupiter. It's got like
today.
Tell us about
it.
Oh, tell us about it.
Yeah, so that's Jupiter is the new DeFi protocol for Solana. It's their DEX token, and it debuted with a 1.35 billion circulating supply, and that implies a market cap of 700 million at its inception. And I wanted to ask you this because I've been wondering, because I haven't been through a full cycle, when everybody refers to, and the OGs go, it's just airdrop season. And when you say, oh, we're, they're doing what Ethereum did before, can you give me a little bit of context in terms of, you just said Uniswap and ENS, like what was kind of the airdrop season? What did that look like for Ethereum, and what came out of that that is very relevant to this day?
Well, what's relevant, I would say, the most successful ones were Uniswap and ENS. And I guess one could say that Blur token as well. I mean, I still think Blur token's at like 62 cents. So for those who don't know, I mean, OpenSea just got crushed by Blur. OpenSea was literally the only game in town. It was a money printing machine for buying JPEGs, online art on the Ethereum blockchain. And they just printed money. They wanted to go the more official company route, and they were going to, there was always rumblings and whispers of an IPO. Blur comes in, and, it's an anonymous developer, and a lot of influencers from the Ethereum ecosystem backed it. I think even 6529's in there. Like all the big names got a piece of Blur, and Blur just basically said, trade on us. They killed royalties as fast as the contract would allow them, didn't enforce those. So that saves you money anyway. And the more you traded, the more you got these Blur tokens, which now I believe in season 2 are called Blast or something like that. I think it's still Blur tokens, but Blast is like the more you trade. And that's why if you just look at this chart, and for people who can't see, the Ethereum sales for NFTs in the last 7 days was about 70 million. There was 41 million in wash trading. So for a total of 110 million. So 37% of all Ethereum trades are wash trading. And what that means is on Blur, people are literally just posting and like two traders will just buy each other's stuff at the floor, and it can totally tank floors of NFT collections, or others could argue it tells you what the floor really is, because everyone who's wanted to sell, right, there's all these buyers who are just trying to get Blur points. They're going to buy it and put it right back up. Well, a lot of people who actually own the collection are like, now's my chance to get out. And, I think I did that with a couple of Zuki, and a couple I got lucky and timed really well. Had I gotten rid of all of mine then, I would have gotten rid of them for like 17, 18, 19, 20 ETH when the Blur farming started. So that Blur token airdrop has netted a lot of people a lot of ETH. Now the total degens, I think Maki Big Brother lost, like he traded so much, because if real holders dump into you at some point, you might be holding 30 Bored Apes at 50 ETH a piece or whatever. Now it's obviously way cheaper. And Franklin, he literally disappeared from Twitter. He did it so much that to get this airdrop Blur token that kept getting postponed, that he basically, people just dumped on him, real folks, and he lost his shirt, and he's I don't even think he's on Twitter to this day. So I digress. The point being that airdrop was worth a lot of money. Now, some people cashed in right away, and some people are restaking those Blur tokens, restaking. Does the Blur token have value? Well, Blur's the biggest exchange now. Do you own a part of the Blur, revenues? No, but you do get Blur for trading on their platform, for which you can transfer to ETH. So in essence, in a way, you kind of do. So when I say airdrop season, that's what I'm talking about. Instead of a stock IPO, it's all, there are no rules in Washington, D.C. for any of this. So it's all super murky gray. So OpenSea tried to take I was going to say the high road, but that's not even the case. It just tried to take the compliant road. Ashton Kutcher was an investor, A16Z and OpenSea was an investor. So all these big names that were investors.
Right.
So they kind of had to take the more traditional route. So they couldn't compete at all with Blur, who doesn't have to play by these ambiguous US rules, and they can just throw this made up out of thin air Blur token to you that you can trade for ETH. So at least right now it has value. So OpenSea, people can mock them or deride them. And, I'm glad there was competition, but they weren't playing in the same ring. It's like if you and I are in the Saturday night prize fight, and you show up with boxing gloves, with like 12-ounce boxing gloves, and I show up in my MMA outfit, and you've got a punch only, and I can grapple, punch, kick. Like, all things being equal, you're screwed. Good luck. Yeah, you're done. So it's an impossible situation. And now on top of that, OpenSea's like, we're entertaining all possibilities for acquisition. Be like, and people are trying to be like, can you qualify that? Like, who are you looking for? They're like, we'll entertain anything. Like, basically,
we're pretty thirsty. Like, what do you got?
They already laid off so many people. I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true, but the valuation, one of the VC firms wrote off, VC firms make 20 bets in a fund or whatever, and 17 fail, and hopefully 3 are unicorns, and the investors and the fund win, right? Well, with this one, that's clearly a write-off, and they valued it at $13 million. I think that was their percentage. So let's just say the value of OpenSea is pennies on the dollar to what it was. It used to have a multi-billion, I think it was like $11 billion valuation. That's what they were saying. Like, it's probably, I don't know, 20 million now. It's probably the name brand. It's probably super unprofitable now. So you'd have to really pivot. I almost think a bunch of like Bitcoin Ordinals collectors, like I think with some tech folks, like I think we should acquire it as the people, and go after Blur. I think there would be something cool there. But they're in big trouble. Their trading volume, they used to dwarf Blur. Blur came in and ate their lunch. And, like I said, Blur is 5x what OpenSea does. Like OpenSea with their current model, they can't IPO. They don't have a chance. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of crazy stuff.
Where does Magic Eden fit into that equation?
So Magic Eden's really interesting. Magic Eden started out as the main Solana NFT exchange. And when they came in, I would argue that Magic Eden raised the UI UX game. Like, people who first came to Solana loved Magic Eden and how simple it was to buy NFTs, how good the interface was. And that's why OpenSea kind of upped their interface. Like, they had no competition before that, even though they were in different ecosystems. OpenSea just adapted too late. But Magic Eden actually just made a huge announcement that they have their own wallet, and it's your self-custodial wallet, but it's going to be, Magic Eden branded. And I kind of, I don't want to say I mocked and derided at first, but I'm like, not interested. And somebody brought up a really good point that I think people should understand. Magic Eden supports Ethereum, I believe Polygon, certainly Solana, and Bitcoin Ordinals. So what that does is their pitch is you can hold all your NFTs from different chains in the same wallet. That doesn't appeal to me as much as what somebody brought up to me, which is now you can transfer ETH to Bitcoin and back. That is a game changer.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
because it's such a hassle. Like, so you don't have to deal with all the bridging and everything, right? Like, it's
Well,
not
it
complete.
is a bridge. Make no bones about it. And it could, but I assume it's probably centralized with Magic Eden. Like, we've received
Okay.
the ETH, the confirmations are here, and we dole out the Bitcoin to that address. Like, it's probably not a perfectly decentralized bridge, because I got burned years ago, and I won't go into too much detail here, but there was something called, it was called the Ren token, and you could bridge Bitcoin to Ethereum, and it was such a great concept and idea, and it worked. Believe it or not, though, because back then it was before Bitcoin Ordinals, not many people were actually crossing that bridge. But if you held the Ren token, you basically had these Ren dark nodes, and as Bitcoin got transferred over to our BTC over on the ETH side, you would actually get a cut going each way. And it was really good at first, and then it was tied somehow to FTX, and it went south. So anyway, this,
Okay.
Magic Eden, like, I don't know if I'd trust to do a huge swap, but that's way better than having to go back to Coinbase, then come out of Coinbase again. So just
Yeah,
that
and
alone is a big deal.
yeah, the bottom line is, as long as you can, or the it's as long as you can take care of things within one space, and it just simplifies it, right? It's such a hassle to have to be like, oh, I got to go over to Coinbase and do this. Like, so any of this simplification and modernization. So, that's what we're kind of looking for on this. And it just seems to me that Magic Eden is now positioned, especially as you said, since it does have Solana, Bitcoin, Poly, all that in there. It may be, I mean, maybe I'm Captain Obvious, but it seems like that's poised for a run. And I wonder if then you're going to be looking at, airdrop season for Magic Eden next, and win token. And is that just, kind of what we're seeing? And just to go back to, just to thank you for the clarification of, kind of this airdrop season, because where I sit, I hear a lot of these trends or terms thrown out there as if everyone needs to understand or has the perspective, oh, this is just like Ethereum's airdrop season, and I want to catch up and understand, but I don't necessarily know. The equivalency now is, okay, so you're basically rewarding early adopters and early users with equity within the ecosystem moving forward. So that is the same to me as, okay, you're an early employee at a startup company, and you will have your options for when we go public, and you can accrue that value. So to me, as I just look through my timelines and hear the stories and everything, it's just airdrop season. That makes me understand that, okay, you're basically looking to reward people for utilizing your protocol or whatever it may be at an early stage, and as a result, you will be gifted the equivalent to equity in the project before it is widely available for other people to purchase. So it encourages activation and activity on developing projects, essentially. And by doing that, the narrative has gone, now that there's more incentive from the airdrops, more people are buzzy about, like, dude, I'll use some of this Solana stuff, things that are in that ecosystem, because I will then potentially benefit from, having things dropped in my wallet that have value that I can either sell immediately and convert to something else, or hold for the long term if I'm a believer in the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's well put. I guess to summarize it is that most of these shit coins and these derivative coins, like, and who knows what Jupe will do, but
Right.
most will go to zero, but Uniswap didn't. You're a part of the governance there. ENS didn't. Blur didn't. And now, on the Bitcoin side, you got runes coming. We have a little mini episode of 10 minutes if you want to learn about RSICs and runes. But runes
Yeah.
is, now that you can see how much you've mined, the price went from 0.035 Bitcoin to 0.065. And I can't do the math that fast, but that's a couple grand. That's at least $3 or $4 grand per RSIC now. And this is a promise. It's 21,000 of these runes, inscriptions, if you will, to get
Right.
the first not first rune coin at the halving, which is in April. So oddly, Bitcoin and Solana, even though they're at totally different stages of their evolution as a blockchain, Solana is trying to be like, hey, we're the definitive number 3. We're even gave Ethereum a run for its money because we are a hardware solution and we can make cost per transaction and handle massive transactions by throwing more hardware at it where ETH cannot. Bitcoin, because of the advent of ordinals, is going through this renaissance because Bitcoin was always just hard money. Now Bitcoin, it's almost, I think we're at just over the 1 year mark where ordinals, the first one was inscribed, and now they're kind of running parallels because Ordinals is giving this resurgence. And now, you get the Lightning Network on Ordinals, which has always been the promise of cheaper transactions, kind of like settling on the side and then being, secured by the main Bitcoin chain transactions. But Lightning has had a very slow adoption and it's kind of clunky. And don't quote me on this, but I think in the ordinal space, and I think what a lot of the big names like Peter McCormack and Hayes and a lot of these OGs miss, who are who have the Bitcoin narrative that it's money first and all this other stuff like ordinals is a silly distraction. But the argument that I make is you're bringing more developers in, looking at problems like Casey Rodarmore, who invented ordinals. They're looking at Bitcoin in a very unique, different, creative way. And this whole new wave, not only do you have more developers to look at the problem, I mean, in a country, we're pushing STEM in schools so much because America, what do we have, 300-400 million people? We need more engineers to compete in the future because, obviously it's all about information technology, machines, nanotechnology. Like, you need educated, smart engineering people to solve that so you don't outsource literally everything. Well, now Bitcoin has more of these software engineers coming in, solving these problems. I think some of the Bitcoin layer 2 stuff is going to be solved by ordinals and runes, or what happens in the next couple of years from these ingenious leaps. So, I mean, look at the price of RSIC. They jumped to 0.065. They were before. The reason for the big jump now is that RuneCoin just got their Discord channel up, but also because on ordiscan.com you can see how much rewards you're going to get from your RSIC miners. Remember, each of these you have, as long as you transferred it to one wallet, you are mining for this RuneCoin that's going to come out when Runes goes live and is activated at the halving in April. The longer you have it, obviously, the more that you mine. Now that people can see NGU number go up technology, and each day be like, I have 300,000 runes. Now I have 400,000. And this is
a good feeling.
It was out of thin air, right? And people are buying more and FOMOing into more. But there's more out there now. Runestone, a lot of the influencers set in the ordinal space, led by Leonidas, and I think his heart is in the right place. But they're saying that drop wasn't fair; it was more arbitrary, and certain collections got way more representations than others. We're saying if you were involved in ordinals in the first year and bought 3 ordinals and have 3 in a wallet, we're going to airdrop. So their number is 110 or 100,000 wallets are getting airdropped to. So a much wider drop. These 21,000, I'm guessing, went to, 10,000 wallets, maybe a couple more. Or maybe 21,000 wallet addresses, but that's owned, my guess is, by 10,000 people or something like that. So I think, bring it on, bring them all on. I think we're going to do another little deep dive on runes and RSICs, a bigger picture, because I've learned so much in the last week. Take 2, but make no bones about it. What's the utility of this runes token that comes out in April? I don't know. But Ordi and some of these big BRC20s, which is kind of the first generation rudimentary we'll call it second layer tokens on the Bitcoin chain. It really isn't on the second layer. It's in the UTXOs of the actual Bitcoin transaction. It's think of it as a little text file allocation within the Bitcoin transaction. So it's kind of clunky, but those had over $1 billion market cap. So people are looking at RSIC, which is by far the clear in front winner right now as far as capturing Mindshare. I called it ODM, Ordinal Degenerate Mindshare. So I'm trying to coin that phrase. Whether it takes off or not with my massive following remains to be seen, but it's too long to say. So ODM feels a lot better. But this one and Runestones, I would say, is in second place right now. But now On-Chain Monkeys is coming out with Karma. So if you have an On-Chain Monkey or any of Danny Uep's artwork, so make no bones about it, like Solana and Bitcoin, even though they're at different stages, are both having this airdrop renaissance. Most of this stuff is degen crap that'll have no utility, that'll go to zero. But within there are some that won't, and are planting the seeds for the technology to be stronger and to do more and to have more vibrant ecosystems.
It makes it very like this conversation's been very interesting to me, because now I have a better understanding of, what I see when it's like, oh, this was airdropped, but it's basically, you're not really having a big barrier to entry aside from utilizing the newer innovations, right? And then you get rewarded for it. So you don't have to put X amount of capital into something necessarily. It wasn't that your ordinals had to be worth X, Y, or Z. It was just that you had to have held 3 ordinals in your wallet, right? So now I'm understanding how motivating kind of airdrop season can be for people that want to carve out, some equity and develop their own kind of, portfolio kind of within the space. And seeing Bitcoin, who's got all this OG legacy, and kind of the battles, as you say, with like the purist, from the it's hard money, that's an interesting kind of interwoven conflict within there. But what's so brilliant about just the overall part of the space is it is so Darwinian in terms of evolve or die, and you hear so quickly, once the narrative kind of changes to, Solana's popping off and it's got all this going on, and wow, wait till Bitcoin, look at all the intricacies and the innovations happening in Bitcoin, then you start hearing, what's going on with Ethereum? Is it da-da-da? So it really serves like multiple motivations that then you see the actual activity when we look at activity by chain, by marketplace, seeing those real world applications. It's an interesting, very unique thing. It's almost like everyone's kind of seeding, as you said. It's almost like everyone's being their own kind of venture capitalist to a degree, and they're getting rewarded based on their activities. So
yeah, you say venture capitalist, I say full degen, but place your bets strategically. Like I got in a little debate, a very friendly debate in one of my Discord channels, and I was kind of saying, RSIC, I'm definitely most bullish this one. Runestone is probably my number 2, and I'm going to place my bets. And he's like, dude, spread your bets everywhere. Go to RuneX, who was first. Like, all you got to do is stake a little ETH and Bitcoin with them, and you'll get the RuneX token too. And I'm like, say that comment again. You have to stake ETH and Bitcoin. I'm like, so I stake my base layer money with people I don't know to get a BS token. And it's funny. You're like, what's the difference? The difference is with Runestone, they're trying to fair drop at no cost to me based on my activity as a first year ordinals and joy ore. Whereas RuneX is saying, hey, stake with us. Who are you? I don't know who you are. And RuneX, he made a convincing argument. I'm like, all right, tell me a little more about RuneX. And that's when I found out you had to actually stake Bitcoin and ETH. I'm like, stake is a very loose term. Like when I stake my ETH and my ETH validator, it's all immutable. I have the private keys. When I'm giving you ETH and Bitcoin, and you're showing me a fake number that's spinning up. So with RSIC, it's a little different because, we got airdropped this literal inscription, and then you transfer it to one wallet and they're keeping track of how long it's sitting there. Did it transfer once? Yes. If so, start mining. So is that mining real mining? No, it's fake mining. They're just keeping track of block by block by block. My JPEGs are just sitting there in the same wallet, and it's quote unquote mining. But the genius thing is, remember, that's all for the airdrop that you're going to get, that they are going to distribute to everybody based on how many that you got. So it's low cost. I did buy a couple more R6. Now with this price, I wish I had even bought a couple more than that. You know, you see some friends in Discord. I look at my number. I'm like, hey guys, anybody else mining R6? And then, you know, I show a couple 100,000 of these future Rune tokens mined, and someone just drops like a 4.6 million. I'm like, yes, sir. You know, let me.
There's scale to everything.
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. Hold my lunch. So there's scale to everything, exactly, and it's how much risk you want to take. I'm generally more risk averse in these degen things, but this one, it checks all the boxes for me because they got the Mindshare. The drop here was a surprise. It's well executed. Even with the runes, there's different symbols at the bottom here that, you know, are different rarities. So there's a lot of factors going on. You see the runes kind of move around there. So there's just a lot of cool aspects to it, and it's a free airdrop. The rune stone will also be a free airdrop of tokens. So like I said, I'm going to stake a couple bets out there. Everything could eventually go to zero. I might sell some right away. I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to have to really study and think about the game theory. Because a lot of these BRC20 tokens kind of tanked. They went up, they skyrocketed, they got higher and higher and higher to unbelievable amounts, and now they've kind of come back down with the advent of the discussion that runes is going to be coming out at the next halving. But those are still, the market caps, I assume, are still in the 100 million. I mean, it's not small potatoes. And what do they do right now? I don't know. We'll see. But a whole secondary market could happen, just like on Polygon. You could have NFTs that might function more by trading, you know, the rune coins. So it's all up in the air right now, and how people behave. Just watching this unfold to me is fascinating. But RSIC has done it the best so far.
Do you think that there's room for multiple successes within that? Like, so the RSIC, and then you're like, you know, I you know, like, which one would you believe in? Or just like, you know, I think we're starting to get to the point where it's not like, oh, there's only going to be one blockchain, you know, like there's room to have multiple chains in the future, and it's not a winner take all. Is this a winner take all sort of scenario? Or do you think that, you know, there's going to be multiple victories emerging from this?
That's a good question. I think there's going to be multiple winners, and I think how it comes out in April is just the beginning. Remember, at the beginning, Casey did something really interesting. Every rune name, this seems so inconsequential, but it has such huge effects. Every rune name has to be 12 characters in length. He did not want to, out of the gate, allow for any length of character, because what people would have done, obviously, that first block, I think it's 840,001 that is on the new, the halving, right? Where the reward fee is not 6.50 anymore. It's 3.75, whatever it breaks down to.
Right.
So by limiting the amount of characters, keeping it at 12 at first. So think of the name of the rune coin. It's got to be like someone wrote mythical rune coin or rune coin RSIC, you know, if that's the RSIC one. Like that's kind of clunky. So my view is the incentive to be first isn't necessarily there, because if you're going to front run a block and pay a lot and get in with a miner to really try and be first and force run, so you're first and you got the name rune or runes, right? Like if that first runner got the name rune or runes in the new runes ecosystem for the runes coin, that front runner just by provenance, by being first, would win. I would say there's less incentive to be first because 12 characters, there's no 12 character that just rolls right off the tongue. So who cares who is first? RSIC is going to have the name that they have. Runestone, I don't even think that's not 12 characters. So it's going to have to be like Runestone Open or whatever they come up with. By the next halvening, it's just going to, the less and less and less letters will be allowed. So the runes 5-letter will be in a block that's probably in 2027. So that's why I'm betting on RSIC, because they have the best marketing and they have the best ODM, Ordinal's Degenerate Mindshare. I'm just going to keep pushing it until it sticks, or for me at least.
Yeah, well, that's what matters. But that makes it. It seems like it's just been well intricately thought out, and it seems, as you're saying, like it definitely triggers and is getting the interest of the people that would be the early adopters. So it certainly seems as if the game theory side of it and just the execution and the potential is what's kind of captivated, a lot of people's mind share, and they're just really kind of interested to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. I know I am, and I'm vested in it now. And, I get airdropped a few. Had I not gotten airdropped, I'd like to think I would have picked a couple up anyway, because with Runestone, I will, it's actually kind of cool what Runestone's doing, because what Leonidas said is like, hey, let's make this more open source. It's from all of us. Let's figure out the most fair way to drop something. So if you have had activity in that first year with, you got 3 NFTs in a wallet, which was what they came up with, there's right. Unfairness to that too, because what about the person who just loves that 1 or 2, or they bought 5 little cheap ones and they're in 5 different wallets? So what is fair, right? But the interesting thing about that one is, that's going to kind of get fair dropped to everybody. And those influencers have a lot of influence because they clog the Ordinals timelines with, these atomic cats and, which I'm personally not going to touch. I don't like the whole concept behind them. And, there was, just to mention, there was a failed mint the other day for 3,300 cats, and they said the website got flooded. It seems like something in the technology broke, I think, is more, which happens, like that's fine, but it just feels cringe to me. And everyone I know is basically like, oh yeah, I got on the cat's whitelist, which is part of the Taproot Wizards group, and they're they're going to flip, and they're all talking about flipping and buying RSIC. So it's a small sample size, but to me, no, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our eye on that. We like to always, try to tie things in that we've talked about or spoken about in previous shows. And just really quickly, there was one thing that I've been kind of low key trying to figure out, and we've talked about it a few times, which is what's going to be kind of where things go in terms of NFT galleries overall, and kind of the curation side of it, and working with, various artists from, maybe even the traditional art space coming over, or, whatever it is. And there's been a handful of operations that have been going that have had some credibility and worked really well more from a independent perspective. But unfortunately, it seems like a couple of them just closed their doors. And that led to a tweet from Art Gnome, who was saying, there's some good folks at Crispies and Sotheby's, so I ain't hating too much, but it's going to be weird if we keep losing these marketplaces like Async and Versum, and we're going to exclusively have to go to these 100-year-old auction houses to buy NFTs. And that struck me with the similarities of the music business side of things as well. And I just really want to see native Web3 art operations be able to have kind of their chance to innovate, just like you're seeing the innovation in the NFT marketplaces from, like what Magic Eden, it's like a battle to be better and to build something that's, natural to the Web3 space. And I think that it's so important to have, native operations come out of this space, as opposed to it just being, the powers that be, becoming having that kind of 2.0 version and incorporating new technology. And we did a whole episode about the decentralization of music and on-chain music, and we talked about all the great things that could happen with it and how the technology could be leveraged. Right. And then at the end, we kind of circled back to a somewhat ho-hum acceptance of, yeah, but we're going to really have to still probably deal with the publishing houses and the people who own all that. So it's frustrating when you see like, oh my goodness, this technology can be so innovative and have such a, progression and such a push for things to become next level and better. But then you see, but I guess we're going to have to include the people that have been doing it for 100 years. And it goes back to the Hovey stuff, where it's like, dude, that's a 90-year-old principle that we're trying to adhere to a, up to the minute technology and innovation. So it's just a theme that I'm noodling on, and I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, Disco. It's a non-issue.
How?
Because so Sotheby's and Christie's. I don't even know who's been more. I think Sotheby's has been more active, but like some ordinals have been sold there. Right. I know some of the shrooms were sold there, which was a very early ordinals inscription. And, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff on the ETH chain, but, we talk about like Versum and Async, like, and maybe I came to the space later, but I've never even heard of these. So who cares about some of these exchanges shutting? To me, I feel like people are using Christie's and Sotheby's to reach this like fine art market that's outside of this. I think a lot of the winners are actually people within the space who are like, ooh, I'll bid on that, because I think the fine art market, I think some people there are taking a look at this, but I think a lot of times it's the whales from the ordinals collections who are buying it. But remember, there is literally, what is it? It's like the seller and the buyer pay like a 20 or it's like 40% total markup that Sotheby's and Christie's get, whereas online, and I'm not saying Magic Eden's better than anybody, but it's 2.5%. Like it's that they created a space that's automated. Most of the daily RSICs aren't being sold there. I think Shroomtoshi sold 3 of the shrooms on there for a couple Bitcoin ETH each. And that I guess that got the name out there. It was a sub 1K collection. So, and it did kind of go through the history of Bitcoin, which in the collection, which I always respected him for, but most of those, he or she cannot go then and sell all 200 there. Or if they do, they'll probably get less than they did on Magic Eden or any other. I guess there's not many other ordinals exchanges right now. Like we want competition there, but yeah. I don't know, because I could also just buy directly from you, like with 40% cut from them. Like it just, the finances don't add up to me. I think it's literally a non-issue. If I want to buy Def Beef, if I want to buy art blocks or something from the Fingerprints collection and the Fingerprints DAO, I can, and I can buy it online. So if Sotheby's sells a couple, who cares?
I guess my what I'm looking at is you're saying that people will find the new alternatives, and as we were talking more Darwinian, it'll be like, okay, well then obviously I'll just purchase on Magic Eden or whatever it is because it'll be less fee for me. I'm just saying I'm concerned about the establishment starting to say, hey, there's something going on here. We're going to put our foot on the scale and get it to come to our place. And there's a representation of that today in the music business side of it, where Universal Music Group is fighting with TikTok right now, and they are going to pull all of their licensing in music from TikTok. And you're talking about Drake and Taylor Swift and all this stuff. So all I'm saying is these upstarts and these new technologies can come into play and have, kind of their user base who understand how to utilize it. But if something's going to get out of kind of the more independent space, which is where I look at some of the, NFT transactions now, and get to more of a global level, I just hope that there is strategy and things in place where a Magic Eden can say, well, why don't you just come here, instead of the older establishment just kind of pushing in. We'll see.
I feel like, I hear what you're saying, but I feel they're top of funnel, or they're an entry into the digital art garden at best for someone who's not technical for me, because at the end of the day, economics makes sense. If I had a piece by Van Gogh, or like, let's say I had like a sketch or something that got passed down for generations, I can't just go on eBay to sell that. If I want to get the max value for that or for my family, I'm going to have to go through probably Christie's or Sotheby's. Maybe there's some online stuff now that have popped up, but it has to be validated. It has to be authenticated. Music is totally different, because music we're all listening to all the time. And even though those little stream revenues are teeny and favor the platforms, they're still ongoing. And the record labels own the venues and the catalogs and the ticket sales. Like it's like 3 to 5 companies that own everything, right? Whereas in art, Sotheby's and Christie's had to be the gateway to buy this expensive art, because they have people on staff who are literally art historian experts who can look at brush strokes and be like, that's a Van Gogh. That's the real deal. Like, I've been doing this for 40 years. That is the real deal. On the blockchain, it's there. It's right there. That it's legit. You can interact directly with contracts. Every economics do not point to Christie's and Sotheby's to being anything more than the first shop you see as you walk in the beautiful digital walled city. They might be first, and then once you're in and you get more into it, even billionaires are, who have more money than anything, sometimes they're the cheapest people and you end up buying them lunch. Like, they don't want to lose 20 to 40% to Christie's or Sotheby's, because nothing needs to be validated. Their value proposition in the equation as middle person is non-existent to me. So to me, it's a complete non-issue.
Which is a complete representation of decentralization and your belief in it to be able to overcome. I'm just saying we'll have to see if they end up putting in barriers to try to, keep art or whatever it is in their realm and in their world. So when we're talking about, a small percentage of early adopters who are comfortable, putting Bitcoin into a hero wallet and going to Magic Eden and purchasing something that isn't, tangible, and they're not necessarily getting the things that they're used to with the proof of authentication and, all these other things. I think there is a chasm to a degree between that. And I think that there will have to be, I agree with it to an extent that if somebody did purchase it, they would have regret to be like, oh shoot, why did I just end up paying 40% of what it is to, both sides of the equation, to the, the art houses and all that, and the purity of being able to do the transaction. I just think that we really need to see that be a smooth way for people to do it and not have them have to go and jump through a bunch of different hoops to be able to then qualify to be able to purchase something on Magic Eden. And I think that probably the innovation of the wallet that they're launching, today or whatever it is, and, being able to have it across the different chains and being able to store it that way, that may really be the solution. So you're probably right. I'm just saying I'm concerned.
But it already is the solution. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, most 99.9% of all transactions and money already flows through these more immutable systems of transferring art from one wallet to another. It's not about decentralization, Maxi, and being early. It's just about pure financials. Now, I guess Sotheby's, I guess the only way I could see that argument is if like the government was like, everybody who buys any digital art has to KYC, but then that's like, oh, you hold a Beanie Baby, it's worth $4,000. Like, that's like, it gets, that's what that whole lawsuit was about, where the fact finding with this Coinbase versus SEC, the judge is like, I keep talking about Beanie Babies now. To me, it's just, I don't see a future where that's possible. Now, I could see Christie's and Sotheby's partnering with really good artists and onboarding them into the digital space and being that gatekeeper for those first collections, and maybe even for more future collections. But I don't know, because the like, to me, at the end of the day, the less friction and the less fees that are extracted by middle people, the more, whether that person, that collector has regret on the first one or not, they might not have regret. They might be like, oh, okay, I see, I can go get these things for only 2.5% and I can scroll, I can buy it when I want without anybody else involved. It might be a welcoming them into the ecosystem. So, we can agree to disagree, but I just think Christie's and Sotheby's will always have their place for real life art, and they're making inroads in digital art. And I think they will play a role. The biggest art houses, I would say now, and the biggest, we'll call them virtual galleries, would be Art Blocks would be the first that comes to mind. Then Fingerprints DAO. And there's certainly plenty of others. 6529.
Right.
I would put him in the same camp. And, 6529 is all about decentralization. We just got that whole certificate from the class we took, and they're trying to go more and more and more on chain. So I just don't see them technologically, even if they hired an entire back room of coders to learn Solidity for ETH, and learn all the different and create their own marketplace. Like you're 5 years behind. Like, I don't see it. And that's, maybe I'm maxi blind, but I just don't see it.
Blutoshi, I get your belief. I get your understanding. You've made it quite clear where you stand on everybody will just figure it out. And this is the better way to do it. So obviously people will get that. The one thing I'd bring up to you, my friend, is...
I like seeing you fired up, by the way. Sorry.
Well, wasn't that the equivalent to Napster's moment where, well, why would anyone go to a record store, or why would anyone buy anything when you can just go peer to peer? And guess what happened? The music business found out ways to clamp down and to get their money on that. So my point from referencing the music industry to the art industry is you can't underestimate the powers that be getting alerted to a new innovation that would make them irrelevant, and then seeing them say, hey, not so fast, we're going to find another way to keep our status quo money coming our way. So that's kind of where I say I see the similarities between what happened in music and what happened in art. And what's frustrating about it is both of those are things that are created by individuals or groups, from the ground up, and then they end up getting co-opted by ownership of whatever it may be. And it's hard for me to think that whether there's, the infrastructure within the traditional art world, that they're just going to stand down and say, oh yeah, they should just buy it on Magic Eden. Let's lose our 40% on both sides, because I saw it happen. I was in that Napster moment. I was in the music business, and I was working with, at that time, like 12 major labels, which then as a result of Napster pared down to 3 major labels. But you know what? The people that were in control are still in control. And that's my fear on this is, yes, there could be a better way. I get that side of it. I'm just reluctant to say, and I believe 100% that it'll work out for the better, and that the consumer and the artist will benefit. I still have this icky feeling that I don't think these old established players are just going to fade off into the sunset and be like, yeah, you're right, just go buy it with no royalty, or just go buy it at 2.5% instead of 40. That's what scares me. And I don't even mean, and this may get me in trouble, but I don't even mean just the companies, but there are people that are tied to different organizations, and people that control these things that aren't so likely to just be like, yeah, take that trade route from us. That's fine. So that's kind of where I was looking at it from, making that parallel to the music side. I
hear you, but there's one big difference. The music industry, like, think of the Beatles collection, like some big, BMI or whoever owns that entire collection, right? So, that's why Taylor Swift walked away. And I think she actually, what she produces now, she owns her own, right? So the big names, I think we're seeing people go to their own labels more, but you have to be big to even be able to pull that off. Whereas the NFT and the big early generative art collections to kick this whole thing off in the last 2 to 5 years, they were outside of Christie's and Sotheby's. They weren't owned by this one house. Now, a perfect example is Yuga. Obviously they have been affected. Bored Apes have gone way down, and not because of royalties, but Yuga basically said, didn't they? We are going to partner with, I assume it was OpenSea, in having our collection be kind of exclusive to here. Now, with an existing
Right.
contract, I don't know how you do that. I'd assume you would have to like make a new smart contract, or maybe it's for collections moving forward. So I can see, because Yuga was in the heyday of, we saw the Azuki numbers and the royalties they got was just insane how much
Right.
money they made in sitting back and doing nothing and letting people trade. But once those royalties went away from a collector standpoint, of course, they're going to be like, if Blur gives them the option only to do 0.5% in royalties to pay, they're like, I'll take that one because I'm paying $18,000 for this Azuki that I've always wanted. So to me, the collection is not already in Web 2 concrete world like it was in music. Napster, as much as I loved it, and those other systems that were allowing you to just download music, it was based on US laws and global laws on music ownership and catalog ownership. It was stealing. Whereas this, why would an industry go backwards? Def Beef's not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to take my old stuff at 0% royalties and go to Sotheby's. Now, the only thing I can think is Sotheby's tries to onboard more people, like London Police or some of these, or Banksy, some of these big names. And, I would think Banksy would be more OG than to go with Sotheby's, but who knows? Maybe Banksy or that collective knows nothing about it, and they're like, Sotheby's has done a good job, they've gotten great sales, and we'll do it. I think money talks. Any ecosystem, if you're buying bread down the street, you're going to buy the bread that has the 2.5% markup, not the 40% markup. Even rich people, the catalog's not owned by them. So to me, I see it. They're going to have a role in this, but I think it's going to be an entrant role. So it's good that we agree to disagree, but I don't know. I think
the most valid point you made there was that the generative and kind of the new school was native to this ecosystem. I understand that. And I think that that's very valid. I guess the only side of it is I do think that there's a lot of great artists that haven't yet adapted or started to put their toe into the digital space. And that's more of what I'm referring to. And you're right that I'm kind of coming from the London Police side of it, but like, I want to see, Damien Hirst has done some things that are on blockchain, but they're still kind of through a curator and stuff. Right. So I get it completely what you're saying. If it's someone who has only done that, and that is a valid differentiator between the music business side of it to this. But I just think that it would be so cool to have these people come into do it the right way. And I just kind of feel burned by, the people behind me that it's not going the right way and that they're going to VV and, it's going that route and all that stuff. So,
yeah, but they'll figure it out. And I think VV is not even I don't even see that as a collection. I think it's like scribbling and coming up with a new idea. Like, to me, it doesn't exist. If they did something immutable on the ETH or Bitcoin blockchain and did a collection, to me personally as a collector, if I chose to partake and I liked the story, I liked what they did, I would consider that their first collection, because VV will be gone. And if you can't hold that piece of art, it's gone. But I just see that as an artist making a poor decision. But I hear what you're saying. It'd be nice to enter directly through the digital door. I think in the long run, personally, I don't think it matters.
Yeah. Okay. Well, personally, I don't even know how this would necessarily fit into the format of the show, but I've been asking some questions, and I think that, I would like to share something that I'm going through, and I'm not looking at it from a, pick me up in the wambulance. I'm so upset I'm crying about something, but I'm trying to look at this as what, I'm kind of at a crossroads, right? So, and what I'm referring to is I'm experiencing some internal frustrations in terms of understanding how I can be authentic to myself, yet still grow a bit of an audience on, kind of the crypto Twitter, and try and, see how that can go. And it comes from the fact that I believe very much in what we're trying to build with this central lens. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, some of the things that we talk about and some of the ideas that we have, I feel like merit some consideration and some share of voice within kind of the overall space and community. Yet I'm getting frustrated where if I do say, okay, well, then I'm going to, write something, and, I know that I'm even paying the $21, $22 for the premium plus on Twitter. And then I'll put out something, and you know how you can see the engagement, like the little da da da, underneath it. And, I'm looking at, a dozen impressions. And then I see, these other things all over my timeline that I don't see, merit or value or whatever it is. And it just is, I guess I'm looking for, a little advice or guidance, or, pick me up maybe, just to keep going on something, because I'm at this kind of internal cultural crossroads where I'm at a stage in my life where I'd like to be, in tune with what I believe in and who I've become and who I want to evolve to. Yet it's kind of like I understand that there's rules to the algorithm, and we did an entire show about that,
Right.
which was very helpful. But at the end of the day, it's like, do I have to be like a reply guy and go out of, what makes me comfortable in order to gain more of a voice? Or is it just a matter of kind of being true to yourself and finding, what is my, output that provides value that people then are generally interested in, hearing what I have to say? So it's a long-winded tee up to a question, which isn't necessarily a question, but more of just kind of one of the things that's in my mind is where I'm at, where, I'm interfacing with, crypto Twitter, and we're looking at, trying to build an audience, because ultimately, yes, I would do this show with you, and we were doing this without, putting it out or, looking for an audience. And that was kind of how this whole thing came about. We're like, well, we might as well record it and put it out there into the world. But I'm just feeling a couple bruises on my head where I'm like, wait, what's up? I got 12 people, looking at this thing, and not necessarily an echo chamber of support.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we did a whole episode on crypto Twitter, and the answer is it's tough because the algorithms, you're invisible until you're not, and then you get a little, and then you get a little. But some of those main tenets, obviously the at least for now, the main heart of crypto is on Twitter, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Instagram is trying, but it sounds like pure garbage over there, and I refuse to get an account. But most of the stuff happens on Twitter. I would say Farcaster is definitely making a run. It's more VCs and it feels more Silicon Valley in there, but I think they're making changes, and it's very kind of crypto focused and decentralized focused, at least certain aspects of it, especially around your identity. I guess the advice would be multi-layered, because I'm no mass influencer. I used to have a huge influencer account in an entirely different thing, so I know the game was different back then and there weren't as
Right.
many of them. But it can be exhausting, toxic, and insidious. But what are the big things we learned? You've got to post twice a day. Having replies is important, but I would take a step back, honestly, because like I would throw it back at you. Like, you've got to be authentic to yourself first, and you've got to write about things that you're passionate about, because like with everything, we get in these, at least I do, I get in these creative like storms where I almost get manic in a frenzy. And that's when a lot of my ideas come, and, I write them down, and, I get them into form. But you almost have to take, in my humble opinion, like a 10-year view, like what interests me the most. And if I write this and get no likes and no engagement, am I okay with that? Like, are my kids going to read this and be like, oh, I know a little bit more about dad? Like, that's the mindset you have to take, because you'll be invisible. You'll be invisible You'll be invisible, and you might even be invisible longer. And then after that, you'll still be invisible, but then you'll get a like here and you get a like there. But I would also challenge you in another thing, because you're basically saying like, well, nobody's hearing my posts, and
Right.
like are you like, with interesting stuff you see on Twitter, are you thoughtfully engaging with those people?
Blutoshi, if you came and saw my Twitter, there's nothing interesting or thoughtful to engage with. So I think that that's probably, I need to take more of that approach and that advice, which would be to have create a better ecosystem that I'm interfacing with, because however my account started or whatever I did, like if you would see the stuff that I have, like there's nothing where I'm like, oh, that's interesting, I'd like to engage with that. I'm just getting, shilly and, most likely body stuff. So I think that one of the first steps is probably what you've been advocating for a while, which is kind of really take a hard look at pruning, what's coming in, and, maybe
cut it back to
to
20. Like literally, what are you following?
yeah, like I think
like 1,000 people now, and it's all, you probably got in early on. You buy cheap NFTs, and which is fine. There's a lot of cool collections, but like if it's like, what's the perfect analogy? It's almost like, I wish I had more friends and be like, well, what are you doing about it? Be like, well, nobody calls me. It's like, are you calling them? Like my dad did that. Like he'd always be the one to be called, and never, it's like, if you're not trying to follow thoughtful, because there is 99% of it is pure garbage on Twitter. It's just, maybe not 99, but a lot. It's pure just like, pump my bags, forward this to get on a white list or a allow list BS, right? And like, I every day, just like with email and subscribes, I prune more and more and more people. First, if I like the person or I've met them and they're always just reposting stuff, I turn off the repost. And then I'll just be like, you know what? But for you got to do something more critical, because if you're getting all garbage, like that's 100% on you. You're being gamed by the algorithm. Like literally go back to follow Zero or follow me, but follow the Dalai Lama, follow like the Good News Network, like follow crap outside of crypto that's interesting. You get a perspective outside, like the crypto game is already so toxic. Like we're here to bring a less toxic view. Like go back to following 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people, and anybody that posts spam, maybe if you knew them or you're like, yeah, but I liked their stuff before, go to before you unsubscribe to them or unfollow them, look at what they've posted before and be like, all right, maybe I'll just mute them for a while. But at some point, unfollow people, and the really crappy people, just block. Like, no remorse. Like block. Like there's so many things where people are like, oh, Paulie did this, Paulie did that. I'm like, he's blocked. Like, I wish
I know what he did.
Yeah, you do. And you were telling me, do you hear the latest about Paulie? I'm like, no, I like, that is fabricated non-news to me. And there's all sorts of people I block, but if you're not going to go out and engage authentically with the world, with what you believe in and what you write, and, I know you stated to me earlier, you don't want to be a comment guy. Like, and I hear you, like, it seems like, oh God, 15 minutes a day, just comment on stuff, because that's a part of what makes the algorithm work, to be seen and heard more. Because if you post something really thoughtful and spend time on it, there's nothing more frustrating than being like, and I got one like from Blutoshi and, and my mom or whatever. Right. So It's frustrating, but at first it has to be like that, because the algorithm, I noticed, like now I've just started doing this. I tried, the family was out of town last weekend. I'm like, I've got an idea. And I was a little manic and Degenny, and I did however many tweet storms you're allowed to do by tagging tweets to tweets to tweets. I think it's 50. I hit the full 50 and I had like 58 in me. I'm like, all right, maybe it's time to edit. Right. So, and it didn't get a ton of juice, but it got some juice. And I was like, I'm happy with what I wrote. If it didn't, I went to bed knowing like what I wrote, I believe, and is what I'm excited about right now. But I also engage, I've been in this longer than you. I've been, in Azuki's, and I got to meet some of them in real life, and so did you. And, so I've met a couple more of these people, and I'm in more Discord groups than you because I got in Ordinals early. But beyond that, like, I'm not super visible on Twitter, but I'm just starting to I'll do 2 posts a day. I'll do some replies, but I only reply to the things where I think I could do a funny quip just because it's like a little entertaining release from everyday work. But also, like, sometimes, like I saw this morning, one of the MFers was like, MFers is the best collection. I'm like, dude, I love my MFer, and it's CC0. It's everything I believe in, but you're not on chain yet. And he's like, no, everyone doesn't know it's on chain. I'm like, well, here's OpenSea, here's going to the contract, here's going to IPFS. Like, I know where it's stored. I don't mind that it's IPFS. And he's like, no, they're all on chain with a soulbound token. I'm like, great, show me, because I want to see it. And I want to, it was a kind exchange. And hopefully by the time we get off the show, he will have showed me and I'll learn something. I'd be like, cool. Like, that's what I was waiting for, because I was thinking of burning my MFer and bringing it over to Ordinals anyway, because it's a sub 5,000 over there. So, which I'll probably do anyway. So I guess.
Well, I think that what I would take from just this conversation is it goes back to things that we've talked about just in terms of what sort of collector do you want to be and what sort of investor do you want to be? And I think that I have to go through that exercise in terms of not necessarily what sort of person do I want to be, but what sort of voice do I want to have, and what sort of topics do I want to entertain in that garden. And I guess the get off the sappy train and buckle up and do it is I just got to go through that process to see what voice I want to share with the world. And I think that you making that kind of, not necessarily like we're putting it on chain and it's out there forever, but to a degree, you are kind of creating and putting a persona out there that then can be, kind of checked and built upon, and you can develop credibility from that perspective. Right. And I think that what's necessary for me is the first step is contemplation of, where are my strengths? What am I passionate about? What do I want to contribute? And I have a pretty good handle on what that is, but until I flush the drain of what I'm seeing in the environment that I'm interfacing with, I can't expect different results. So that's kind of, it's going to be kind of an ongoing process, but I think that I kind of hit rock bottom. And, when you look at, light, but when you look at life, it sounds like
an AA program,
yeah, but when
I've hit Twitter rock bottom.
Yeah, but if you hit that, then you can go one of two ways. You can keep, you can show yourself another bottom, right? Or you can use it as a reset. And I think that maybe there is value in social media resets, especially when you're doing it from an anon perspective, and you jump into something because you're excited about the space overall, yet you don't have like a network or knowledge. So you're kind of just desperate and probably just clamming out, oh, they'll follow me back, I'll do that. And then, you kind of reap what you sow from that perspective. So it'll be something that I'll be happy to kind of, share as I go along that journey. But I just wanted to have a little catharsis, so to speak, and, just kind of vent something that was just kind of percolating, within my innards. And I think that, it was helpful to just kind of talk that out. And I'm excited about kind of just letting that out, of just because sometimes you just have things in your head and it's like, it doesn't make me feel good in my stomach. What's
Twitter's
up?
Frustrating. And so is the whole, because remember, social media, the cool thing is, like, when we grew up, it was television and basically news was very one way, and the news organizations controlled everything. Now with social media, we can have a voice, and it's very exciting, because we all have something to say. Some people probably more important things to say than others, but everyone deserves a voice and has something to say. And it's a whole different game than we grew up with. We were analog kids playing kick the can who are now in a digital world, and Gen X folks like you and I have actually adopted this. And, to a lot of these kids, it's second nature how to kind of get that buzz. But for us, you have to ask yourself too, you don't have to be high profile. You don't there are many advantages to keeping a very low profile and just being a collector and being you don't have to be, and I don't have to be, none of us do. And sometimes I like I said, in a whole different industry for my company, I had an account that had 500,000 followers, and we'd get thousands of retweets and likes and stuff like that, especially for big events. And, it was exciting because we had a huge voice in a very niche space. And now, I sold that. I'm starting over, and it's kind of fun to be anonymous, and it's kind of fun. I will say, I know you didn't want to be a reply guy all the time, but if you find people authentically that you resonate with and they say something and then you have a response, like, to me, nothing takes the place of like being in person and having a good heart-to-heart conversation, but you can have great intellectual conversations in there that, dare I say, are fulfilling. Like you just have to decide. And the beauty is you don't have to decide it and sleep on it after the show. Over time, you can see, because what I found is the more I'm like, I was the same way. I'm like, stupid. I don't want to do it. But then I'm like, I'm just going to, like I said, family's out of town, 2 tweets a day. I had on the R6, I got really excited, and runes and runestone and all that. So I started posting stuff and got quite a bit of hits over the weekend for me. And I'm like, I'm glad, but I wrote it anyway for me. But I've also made probably way more connections than you in the space through replying to other people and having these conversations, and through Discord and being an early Ordinals person. So I won't take that away, but it's just, you can decide this over time. And I think you'll know when you know, and you'll get inspired. And in the meantime, just research things that are interesting to you. Follow what kind of collector or what kind of crypto person are you? I know your big thing right now is to get, that ETH validator running. And that's a hard one because that's a high stakes, that's expensive. So you've got to save, and you're like, but I can't. I'd like to jump in an RSIC, but I can't. But you have the discipline to do that. And I'm going to miss out on 1 million Solana airdrops, but am I going to buy more Solana and jump in on those? No, because I can't put my attention everywhere. And I still don't think Solana is as permanent as the other ones, but that thesis might change over time. So you got time.
You know what you just said, there's a part of that that's important too, which is, while we talk about permanence with, blockchain and inscription and everything like that, with how we interface with the space, it doesn't have to be permanent, so you can change your PFP, you can change your allegiance, you can change your mind,
you can change your name,
interest,
dude. I was Chicago X a month ago, and now I'm Blue Toshi. I rebranded, and
when we started the show, all you were talking about was Ethereum validators. Like, that's the way. Don't mess around with anything else. And now you're like, I really kind of like the Bitcoin side of things, and I like this, and now I'm an RSIC. So I think you just kind of lean into not taking it so seriously. But I think the last part I'd say is, I think it's been more of a challenge for me because both of us are at a stage in life where I think we've come to terms with reducing the toxicity in our IRL day to day, right? Like, so we don't put ourselves into those positions because we don't have to, right? So like, I'm not going to, play high school ball, or worry about that sort of stuff. But then when I go in to my little ecosystem on Twitter, which is, as we say, needs to be adjusted and pruned, I'm like, I'm not used to this. What are all these people doing? And it just feels very ungenuine. So I think we kind of talked it out. I appreciate the therapy session. And, we, as listeners know, we don't always have to define what we're doing on the show. It's more of a chance for us to get together, explore topics,
absolutely,
and, really kind of share with our audience. So, more to come on that.
Disco, probably a lot of thoughts that people in the crypto space out there are having. I mean, this is like, I've noticed with a lot of Ordinals folks, like I said, there's the influencer set on one side and they control the narrative, but the people that I'm friends with in the space and follow, like a lot of the Ordinal punks and a lot of the rocks and node monkeys, they're the influencers are almost making this group look like and certainly Raktoshi look like the bad guy. And it's just another narrative. It's almost like to create narrative. It's so stupid. And part of me is like angry. It's like, I feel like our side and the things we like to collect and why we like to collect them aren't being heard. And, so that lights a little fire, because some of these guys basically, with these influencers, they FUD that which they weren't on the ground floor of. And it's like, it's so, they did it once or twice. I'm like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with this founder over here. And then now they do it to all of the ones they're not involved in. So you're like, okay, this to me is sour grapes, because it's stealing some of their narrative. And I think some of the coolest art out there has nothing to do with their narrative. Like, I wouldn't, Taproot Wizards, to me, Atomic Cats, like, I'm glad they exist and they're pushing the ordinal space and what they're doing, but no interest. I think there's way cooler stuff out there on people who don't have the mouthpieces. And, we want to represent that too, because we're independent media. People need to, we forgot to do it at the beginning, but subscribe. And if you like independent media and getting takes from Disco and I, from an older crypto person and a newer one, and bridging that gap to understanding the space, subscribe and like and post a comment, but really just subscribe. We like to go long and get nuanced and weave all this stuff together for you. Just listen to the show. I listen to us at 1.25 speed, so I won't be offended. Younger people probably listen to us at 1.5 speed, but there's good stuff here and it's all honest and it's all from the heart. So follow, subscribe, and do all that stuff. But Disco, I appreciate you and these conversations, because we were having them anyway. So let's keep doing them.
Yeah, I think it's it's an ever evolving journey, and the one thing that we're totally blessed with is we're not ever lacking for topics to cover and for things to kind of expand our minds about. In fact, the only thing that I really experience now is FOMO of not going down every single rabbit hole. And I think it goes back to that filter perspective and having some discipline, because there's just so many interesting things to explore. So I appreciated the conversation this week. I look forward to next week. And as always, this show is for entertainment purposes only. Please don't take anything we say or construe it as financial advice, and don't get over your skis, and try to stick to your plan and do what you think makes the most sense at all times. So until next week, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody. Subscribe.